Hi, this is Eugene, and I wanted to share some information and insights I have in regards to this land that is under uh, basically a purchase that I'm trying to do, contingent upon the due diligence in the research that we're doing on this property. So the property has an address of 1555 Sunbury Court in Vista, California. It is, although it is in the unincorporated area of San Diego County. So if I were to zoom in, what separates San Diego County unincorporated area from the city is actually this South Santa Fe Avenue. So one side is the city on the left, and on the right is the unincorporated area. So this property, as I zoom in here, you can see probably a higher density of residences on the left. On the right, you'll see most of these properties are zoned rural residential, and they sit on about half-acre lots. So the one that's circled right there, actually this dot should be, that's a bad place to put the dot. The dot is really far to the left, adjoining South Santa Fe Avenue. So let me actually show you the Google Maps, which is a little bit better of a view. So here's the front of the property from the highway, and the old sign is still listed there, which is invalid. But here on the left, you can see there's a private road that adjoins this property, and on the if I were to scroll over furthermore, you can see this multifamily property that's situated directly left of this lot. And there's several of these buildings. I think there's about 5 or so. And there is a private road, as I was mentioning before. As I turn and pan over the camera here, you can see, looking down the highway, this highway was expanded several years back. Fairly recently, I would say in the last 5 to 8 years, it was expanded. And I believe, I'll show you in a minute, the easements that were made, I believe, to make the widen the highway. Now this also is a private highway, or private road, I should say. Although it does have a Sunbury Court address, it is noted as a private road. So here's essentially the lot. If I were to scroll all the way over, you'll notice that there's some active train tracks, a baseball field, so on and so forth. But there is a center divider there that you cannot pass. That was recently put in. The other thing that you'll notice about this property is I believe all the utilities are right there. So you'll see a cable box, utility box. The far left-hand side, you'll see a metal box out sticking in the front, which is natural gas. So I believe it has all the utilities, and then the overhead lines, you'll see power lines right here in front of the lot here. So couple things to note as I go through. I looked at Ticor Title's map here, and as I zoom in, you'll notice that there's a par 2 and a par 3. These easements, which I think overlays these private roads, are, you have the one private road on top, highlighted in blue, par 2, and then below is par 3, which is also another private road. And I believe those are the easements to allow for that private road. Now, you'll notice as I scroll to page 2, and the interesting thing is that this property, I think it was originally subdivided in 1933, and from possibly, I don't know, the current owner might be the second or third owner, but there were a lot of easements that have occurred throughout the years. And as you can see here, one notable is the one at the front. You can see the blue section, which is facing the South Santa Fe Avenue Road. And so there was an easement recorded, most notably for the public highway, and that was recent, April 23, 2008. So I was actually looking up the title, preliminary title, and you can see that there was an easement that was made for the public highway right here. Said instrument additionally contains the privilege and right to extend the structures and excavation and embankment slopes beyond the limits where required for the construction and maintenance thereof. So the embankment slopes, I believe, is my theory is that there's a slight slope at the beginning of this lot, and the county wanted to avoid any of this runoff or mud spilling onto the highway, so they developed the sidewalk here and actually created this drainage ditch you can see right in front of the fence. So I believe all of this are easements, and I think the land actually for this lot goes into the highway. And that's my theory. So here's the lot right here on this ArcGIS map. And as I measure this, first of all, you'll find each of these lots, when you look on there's another map, I'm not sure if I have it immediately available, but each one of these are about 0.55 to 0.57 parcels. But you'll notice the one immediately next to South Santa Fe Avenue, it looks smaller. So I believe the easement of the highway cut into this, as well as the Sunbury Court you can see, and then the private road that sits on the north side of this property. But as I measure out kind of the usable space of this property, it comes out to about 0.4 acres. And on the north side, it looks like the length's about 103 feet. The side closest to the highway is about 155 feet. And at the front, at Sunbury Court, it's about 92 feet or so, so about 8 feet less than the top side. But the net usable space, I actually took a string and actually measured it, was about 165 feet across, and then from top to bottom, and then about 95 to 100 feet in the front. That was kind of my general assessment of where the fence lines are. So that's what that measures out to is this usable space is about 0.4 acres. The land was measured at, or it was listed as 0.6 acres, and they got that off the property summary report from the county. So if I can do this, does that measure out? This is square miles, but when I do this to acres, yeah, it's 0.3. It's about 0.4. There's a summary map. Let me see if I have that here. I can pull up real quick. That's not it. Here it is. That was it. So this I pulled off, and the listing agent also provided as well a property summary report. The county listed it as 0.6, but as you can tell, there was a bunch of easements that occurred over the years. This was an estimate. The actual map showed it at 0.55, and then that ArcGIS that I just showed you showed this property at about 0.4. And I think that 0.4 is the net acreage available. And the nice thing is that per this report and confirming with one of the neighbors, looks like all the utilities are provided by these utility districts, for water, Vista Irrigation, sanitation is Buena Sanitation, and as I mentioned, natural gas lines appear to be right in front of the property, so on and so forth. So I think that's going to help a lot in terms of getting the infrastructure and the utilities required for this property. So what am I trying to accomplish in the FSCB? Number one, it's the viability of building a multifamily unit on this property, ideally 4 attached units or 4-plex. The costs associated with multifamily rezoning, it's currently an R1. The property is situated directly north of this, if I can just show you real quick, are all listed as commercial property. So I thought I had, let me see if I have this handy very quickly. Let me see if I have this. Pull this up as quickly as I can for your benefit. Here it is. So you can see in pink, these are all commercially zoned properties. There's some way at the top, is C36, and then you have C31 at the bottom, which was that multifamily apartment complex, literally right next door. And then where you see search result is the yellow, which is rural residential. So my hope is that there is a logic and a reason behind proposing a rezoning. Having it rezoned to C31 may not be as feasible. Getting it rezoned to a multifamily probably makes more sense. It's probably more limited in scope in terms of what would be developed on there in the future. And potentially the commercial type of designation means that you have to provide a lot more parking as well. Couldn't find a lot of parking information requirements in the development guide, but perhaps you can look into that as well. So again, goal, figure out the cost, and if it is possible to rezone to a fourplex, and try to assess what it's going to be mostly county and utilities in terms of what the fees are going to be associated with that. Now, the one interesting thing, there's a document called Z4000. See if I can pull that up. Is this it? Yes. So these are the designators associated with the types of permitted building types. So most likely what I was thinking was this attached 3 to 8 dwelling units right smack in the center there, or multi-dwelling, right? Well, this says separate lots, and I'm really looking at one same lot. I don't want to subdivide or try to get additional parcels of any of that nature. It's basically one lot to get it rezoned for multiple dwellings, ideally fourplex. And it looks like the designator here would start at K as the type of residential that I would like to potentially pursue. There might be another option here. For the K designator, the thing that I noticed was the height maximums were actually greater than 2 stories, so that would not be my preference to pursue anything above and beyond 2 stories, because most of the homes in that area are no larger than 2 stories. So just to fit in with the rest of the community there. Now, the one thing I wanted to highlight, there's a couple things to me that would make a lot of sense, and that is that if I build something, this is a rectangular lot, and the long side is parallel to the highway. So I think, in my opinion, the property, or if it was a fourplex, I would want it to face the highway versus one of these side roads. Now, as I looked at the definitions for what is considered the front yard, and let me just pull this up in this Z4000 document, they were just talking about what the front yard designator is, and I think what was a little concerning and possibly would be included in the rezoning request. It says for a lot with streets on 3 sides, which mine has, but 2 of them are private roads, that portion of the lot which is opposite and most distant from the street, which provides access, shall observe the required rear yard setback if access rights have been relinquished to that abutting street. Which, I don't know if that definition qualifies for a private road or not. Certainly when I called the county, they preferred not to have any type of right-of-way coming right off of the major highway, because that creates a traffic issue. So you'd want basically traffic to spill off of this highway into these private roads. This is an aerial view of this property right here, and there's an asphalt pad you can see in that left-hand side. But traffic would spill or turn onto Sunbury Court or the other private road, and then either make a right or left into the to the lot and park. So let me just show you kind of the type of house that I was thinking about, or a type of fourplex. So I just pulled this off the internet, something of this nature, where this view would be ideally the view that you would see from the highway, versus to take advantage of the maximum usable space that is rectangular in nature that parallels the highway. Now, I think to maximize kind of usage of this space, in my opinion, I think it would be ideal to have kind of side-loaded garages. So hopefully I make sense here. You can see this diagram. It looks like it's basically 4 units that are all kind of rectangular in nature. They show the garages in the back. Kind of what I was thinking was to actually have the garages on the sides. So on the far left-hand side, what I was thinking was, if you can see I'm trying to highlight this on the far left-hand side, this would be one of the private roads, and that a car would come into the private road and then immediately make a right and then drive right into the garage, 2-car garages, one on each side. And then on the far right side of this page would be coming off of Sunbury Court, and let me try to highlight this here just to show you where I'm trying to point. And you would come right off of Sunbury Court, enter the lot, and then drive into these 2 garages that are side loaded. Now, if I were to have a 4-unit, you might ask, well, how in the heck, if the 2, if both ends are garages, you know, my thinking was to possibly have a staircase that goes immediately up to the 2nd floor, and one of the units would just be on top of the two garages. And then on the far right, same thing. So you climb up the stairs, go to the 2 garages. There would be living areas above the 2 garages, and then for the 2 inner units, you basically have an upstairs and a downstairs. And I probably wouldn't develop the entire upstairs, because what we're looking at, you know, this floor plan right here is 96 feet in length, and then 44 feet from front to back. If you look at let me see if I can zoom this up so you can see this. So the footprint that I was thinking was very similar to this, except for taking maximum advantage of the side private roads, so that cars can enter the private roads, immediately turn in, and immediately park right into the garage with minimal turning and turning corners, and creating a super long concrete or asphalt driveway. And then I could try to maximize the amount of open space on that lot that could be used, you know, potentially for a backyard or something of that nature. A couple of areas that I wasn't clear on after reading the documentation was the usable space. That really wasn't clear to me what that means and how it's defined here. So I think it was open usable space, if I'm not clear, or open space. So there was some information on that it would be great if you can get some additional information. They have some regulations on this, and the amount of here it is, on page 52 of this 56-page document. Open space, if I had a K designator, I think, which was the multifamily, the private open space would be, for each dwelling unit, would be 350 square feet, and then 500 square feet for the group. So public open space, I guess, for all the tenants, which seems pretty darn generous in my opinion. That's a lot of open space to try to conform to. So that could be a potential issue. Now, the setbacks are pretty large, but with the center line being this highway right here, I think from the center line of even one of the roads backwards, I suspect that might even be about 35 feet. And so the goal would be to try to put this fourplex as close to the highway as possible, so that I have as much open space in the back. And then that, you know, if there's some public parking for visitors, or I should say visitor parking, I really see those possibly 1 or 2 spaces on each of the corners closest to the highway, where visitors can turn in the private road, basically then turn again, and park right in the corner, maybe a couple spots in those corners. That was kind of what I was envisioning. It wasn't really clear how much visitor parking was needed. Okay, so open space is one thing that was really not clear to me, because if I need that much open space, that could eat up a lot of land. So would really have to measure that out. Is there truly enough open space to accommodate 4 units or not? And then the floor area ratio was not really, I couldn't find that in any of the documents, but apparently there is some type of designator or ratio for the floor area ratio. The setbacks are here, and if it was a K denominator for multifamily, setbacks, I think from center line from the front yard would be 50 feet, but again, there's a question of what is the front yard. Now, I think that might be part of the rezoning request, is to move the definition of the front yard is essentially facing the highway versus facing the private road. So that's another area that needs to be investigated on top of the floor area ratio for such type of building. A couple documents that I just wanted you to be aware of. There is a utilities sheet that you can just go, find out what the utilities are, and that summary report essentially provides you what the immediate utilities are for that specific lot. And then what was the other area that I was going to talk about? Let me see. I can make sure that you have all these documents. And so there is a document called a zoning ordinance summary. I think if you go down to the county and you want to have a conversation about this specific property, you want to bring this form and try to fill out as much as you can. If you're going to ask, ideally we just ask as many informal questions as possible. That doesn't cost anything. So it's a 12-page document on this. And again, things like the FAR, floor area ratio, not really clear to me. And there might be some additional information that you can find here. And then as we continue to pursue this for rezoning, there is what the county suggested is to conduct this initial consultation meeting. And so essentially they recommend having the questions that need to be answered. What are the questions that we need to get answered? And then who do we want attending that meeting, whether that's planning, ordinance compliance, environmental, access, road improvements, drainage, stormwater, and they can bring those people to the meeting and ensure that we get as many of our questions answered as best as possible. And I think they would even potentially give us a directional view of if the rezoning is worth pursuing or what the key areas of concern might be. So hopefully this provides you a lot of information about the property, and please let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for your time. All right, we'll talk to you later.